Hey folks, today I'm speaking with a legend in American clinical psychology, professor at the University of Nevada who coined the term clinical behavior analysis and developed the widely used and evidence-based procedure often called acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Now, to be honest, I didn't realize how big a name he is in psychology until after the interview. So I'm doubly honored that he takes the time to speak to me. He's trained so many psychologists throughout the years. He's been recognized with multiple awards, and he's a truly inspirational character, serving others by helping them to understand their own minds. Welcome, Dr. Stephen C. Hayes. Book to read, so I've been going through it, but it's I'm only halfway through, I must confess.
Yeah.
It
actually gets into some art and literature kind of things. Music, I think, is very, we're dealing with some of these deeper symbolic issues with art and literature and music. And,
it's fantastic.
It touches on it a little bit at the end of the book, but
yeah. No, I'm sure it's a years of study. This is you're trying to sum up all your teaching. So
yeah, it's a deep dive.
But I've seen your TED Talks and they were amazing.
Yeah, those are from the heart kind of things.
Well, I would ask you to describe, how you came into this, but I think I should just advise people to look at those TED Talks because it's so fantastic how you go on stage, and at one point you sit down on stage in front of this huge audience and talk about how you suffered an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful. I mean, that must have taken that's a powerful speech.
Well, that was hard, actually. Right 5 minutes before I'm this far away from my wife saying, I can't do this. And the thing that I couldn't do, you probably could guess if you've seen the talk, is the scream. Because that scream had come out of my mouth when I was caught in a machine at work and almost killed when I was 19. And it's a very odd sounding thing, like this sort of primitive, like Tarzan falling off the cliff type scream or something. I'm dating myself with a Tarzan reference, and then at that night on the carpet, and then number 3 is in that TED Talk where I do it on purpose. And I didn't practice it. I just refused to practice it. And my wife knew why that would be hard. And she said, just be yourself. So I got out there and I tried to channel something so people could kind of hear the note of what despair sounds like.
Yeah, it was very profound.
I'm never going to do it again. I'm not going to do that.
No.
Sound, I hope, I pray, never has to come out of my mouth again.
No.
I'll watch out standing near cliffs. I don't want to hear myself on the way down with that sound.
No, but you must have got such a reaction from the audience afterwards that that helped so many people, I'm sure.
I've actually had emails from people around the world who know what hitting bottom feels like, and they felt as though, although that's not the way it came out with them, that they could relate to it just emotionally. They could feel it of that sense of desperation and no way out,
But for you and for all your patients and for everyone reading your book, it's we're glad you hit rock bottom because you've formulated this whole theory of
well, what I did bring to it, it's not actually uncommon. Hitting bottom is not uncommon. It's common as dirt. People do it all the time. The only thing is that because of my science background, I was able to bring something to it to really begin to try to think in a different way about how did I end up there, and what is this way out, which is really a way in. And and so instead of writing about my solution or what I did or whatever, I tried to get focused on what are the processes of change that predict the trajectories of human lives, and try to bring my kind of analytic Western science mind to it. So that put me on a long journey that puts me here.
Yeah, because at the time you were a clinical psychologist. You'd studied all these Freudism, Freud, all these technique, cognitive behavior, and you were very deep into all these traditional theories. And then you said that you realized this isn't working, and you created a new, and you did trying to do a paradigm shift in the field of psychology, no?
Well, and it wasn't like I knew what the answers were. That there's I tell the story in the act where we went out early because that scream is 1981. By 82 or 83, me and my lab, just about 5-6 kids, that was the only people who would be interested in this, did a couple of the earliest what we now call ACT trials. We did 3 of them, one in pain, one in weight control, one in depression. The only one I published was one in depression because my first doctoral student, Rob Zettel, needed to get a job. The other ones I didn't publish, even though they came out well, because to me, it wasn't a matter of method. It was a matter of process. And so the part of what I've tried to do is understand just this. I mean, why does the human mind function the way it does in such a way that it's such a powerful thing for us and helpful to us in so many ways? And yet we're the only species that know how to suffer amidst plenty. We're the only one who leaves the planet by our own hand. How could that possibly be? And it required going all the way down to my students and I called it the basic slide, because we kept asking questions. Early on, we were talking about how verbal rules dominate over experience. Mm-hmm. That was a door in. But then you want to know, well, what's a verbal rule? And then it is, well, what's verbal anyway? Well, what's language? Well, what's cognition? What's a word? What's a symbol? And we came up with an answer that's different. I mean, and we have a 300-year journey inside Western science of trying to figure out what you and I are doing right now. Mm-hmm. And trying to apply things like association and neural connectivity and so forth to understanding that, but not in ways that then ended up being able to do anything powerful and changing human lives. And the ACT journey took me in a different direction. We ended up with a theory of cognition, which today has 300 or 400 studies behind it. And if you have an autistic spectrum disordered child who's not able to speak, it could be helpful in bringing that child into the verbal community. If you wanted to raise your IQ, it'd help you do that. Yeah. Send you a website, about 6 months of work, you can raise your IQ. But it also gave us the tools then to try to figure out how to unhook the parts where the mind sort of drives you off the edge of a cliff, and learn to sort of have this tool without having it tool you, but to be able to use it without being used by it. And you end up often in places where monks and others were there long ago talking about some
watching
methods.
The breath, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But now with an understanding of how it happens that allows us to do some things that are, maybe not 10-day silent retreats that, by the way, much as we want to, people on the factory floor are just not going to do it. I mean, they don't have to
speak in their language.
Time. So we're trying to put into the West methods that only monks used in the East, and they were given alms to do it. The normal folks didn't do it. Normal Buddhists don't do this. I mean, they're pushing flags and cracks and giving alms to the monks to do it. But we're trying to do it in Google. And it's fine. It's fine. So far as it's fine. I mean, they're fellow travelers, and we put contemplative practice methods in most of that work, but we can put things into people's hearts in 30 seconds that will help them catch how this voice within has dominated them.
So how would because I've just released an album of songs about the mind. They're called master. Are you the master of your mind? You're not the voice in your head. Background worry, things like that. But I'm still describing the problem. But you've got practical tools for the solution. So perhaps you could.
Yeah, but just catching the voice. I mean, that voice in your head, and is huge. I mean, well, because at the point at which you catch the voice in your head, which is not only guiding your behavior and telling you what to do and criticizing you and telling you when you do it right or doing it wrong, it's also saying, I'm you. Mm-hmm. And saying it in a voice that's so familiar that it seems quite plausible that voice is you. After all, you've been listening to it and speaking it. I mean, obviously it's part of you. It isn't coming from the ether for as long as you've had that voice, which is probably right about the time that I Hear Now shows up as an integrated thing, which is when consciousness shows up around, in a verbal sense, with around age 3. And so if you can help people just catch that there's a voice, mm-hmm. Well, now you have at least the listener and the voice being listened to. And that little part of the listener is the seed from which all this kind of mindfulness and values and flexible attention and emotional openness, cognitive flexibility, that's the seed from which it opens. It's the seed of spirituality, of connection between people, of being able to think about what's happening with people suffering on the other side of the planet, or what will happen to your children if global warming continues, or maybe your children's children. I mean, you can move consciousness around mm-hmm. because of the part of you that can witness the voice within. And so it's really important to be writing songs about that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you said in your book that it really helps to give the voice a name to get that, help to get that detachment.
Yeah, because if you catch that you have the voice and you want that voice, I mean, you do when you're fixing your car or, planning an album or, doing your taxes, you want that voice. You just don't want to disappear into it.
Right.
Because it's not safe. It doesn't know how to live a whole human life. Mm. It's a repertoire of behaviors that's integrated and hangs out together. It can evaluate, predict, judge, but it can't do the least little thing. I mean, for example, it doesn't know how to look at a sunset and say, wow. It looks at a sunset and says, too much pink. Mm. So there's parts of us get smothered by it. And, if you can bring your awareness to it and then get a little bit of separation that's not defensive and dissociative, but allows perspective so that you can take what's useful and leave the rest. So giving a name does that, because somebody came to you and said, hey, here's what you ought to do. You would know full well to listen, to use it if it's useful, and to not use it if it's not useful. And that's not what happens. I mean, we can turn the keys to the car over to that voice, if I'm mixing metaphors, but you know what I mean, where whatever it says goes, and now our life is out of control. Ironically, in the context of trying to get control over stuff you don't need to control, which is what the voice tries to do. Tries to turn your life into a problem to be solved rather than a sunset to be appreciated.
So would you say, because you're a scientist, where are you on the spirituality spectrum? If you divide, if there is a voice, so that is not me, that is not the I, then are you the I as a soul, spirit?
Well, in one sense, and we've actually done some research on this, there's two, we'll back up a little bit. In the theory of language that underlies language ends up being learned relating, not learned associating. And that changes a lot of things. One thing, it makes it very implausible that you can get in there and start erasing thoughts and eliminating them because it's too vast a network and it does too many things. It's like trying to rearrange a spider web that's as big as your house. But this question of, are you distinct from the voice, or is the voice within you, has been researched. And it turns out the more transformational place to go is it's a distinct feature and it's within you. So the relating part of theory of language, it's better to think of it not just as one of distinction, but one of inclusion. So think of yourself like mayor of a city.
Okay.
What if like the whole city in some sense is you, including things rumbling around the basement, like racist jokes, to just fit a moment right now with what's going on worldwide, and especially here in the US with Black Lives Matter, and really kind of looking at what do we do about racism. I talk about it in the book. Those jokes are doing their work when you're asleep. They're moving things around. Whether you like it or not, they're in your dreams. Whether you like it or not, yeah? And so if you just say the real me is the spiritual I hear nowness, the ineffable, edgeless, no thing, everything, because it's edgeless, it's not thing-like. That, by the way, was the first paper ever written on ACT. It was called Making Sense of Spirituality in 1984. Ironically, published in the journal Behaviorism. So it's kind of a geeky take on what that, where spirituality comes from, cognitively, just within my frame of the Western science. I'm not trying to speak to people's faith traditions in a dominating way. I don't want to say it's really just this, but the part of the elephant that I get to describe is the Western science part. But as it showed up to me, and you saw it on the Night of the Carpet TED Talk, it was kind of in a frame of distinction. I don't know who you are, but you can't make me do this, where I catch the voice and distinguish myself from it. But the next shoe to fall is one of inclusion. No, that voice is echoing my history, my experiences, and I want to be able to have it with me because it's helpful when I'm trying to solve problems. It's not helpful when I allow it to claim that it's me and I become the problem. So, I don't like ontology at all. I don't think language is really about the world in the sense we're living in the real world, but we're partitioning it. And for our own pragmatic purposes, you can't even trust what your eye sees. We could be living in something more like the Matrix, with falling green numbers than what we see when we open our eyes. As long as we survive, evolution will pick it. It doesn't have to pick what's real. I mean, there may be some quantum quirky, something going on here that even physicists have a hard time getting to with their instruments because, our sensory and perceptual way of coming into it is just a way in. So I don't want to say what anything is really. Back to your question, it turns out, we've done research on this, the best way to think about who you are is one in which this sense of spirituality, of consciousness, is distinct from and includes all of it.
Okay. I heard you had a good bus driver analogy where you have all these passengers.
Yeah, it's a very practical way to think about it. If you just think about driving somewhere, if you were driving a bus, and you've got all kinds of passengers on there, they get on of their own accord. Bus drivers don't usually get to pick. You pay the fee, you get on, and it turns out the only fee you have to pay is showing up and experience. You're in. If anything happens to you over the next day, it's in for life. because there's no delete button.
Yeah.
You know, so, and if they're going to talk and argue and you say turn left, turn right, etc., you as the driver, you know, hear that. And you know, where is this bus going is up to where the destination is, what the direction is. And you get to choose that, just like a driver spins that little thing on the front of a bus, or nowadays pushes the electronic things to pull the destination up on so people can see where it's going. You get to say that, you know, I'm about creating love in the world, or creating an appreciation of beauty in the world, or creating cooperation in the world, or you know, whatever it is that you're up to. And many different things, probably. You get to say that. And that issue of distinction and inclusion fits right there. On the one hand, no, the driver is not the passengers. The person who's listening and choosing directions is this deeper sense of you on the one hand. On the other hand, that bus is the whole of you, including things that you don't even notice. And there's things going on in your epigenetic regulation of your genes right now. This conversation is literally changing the expression of your genome right now. You're not aware of that, but you're aware of the effects of that, and that's part of the bus too. It's kind of like what it's composed of and how the engine runs and so forth. The culture that you swim in. I mentioned the Black Lives Matter, you know, and we're looking now at some of our heroes. You know, George Washington had slaves. You know, we look afresh at, for example, what's inside that bus includes your cultural history. Some of which, even in the heroes we pick, is creepy as hell. You know, and so we have to, well, not have to, but it's our sort of task to show up to the whole of it. Sorry for that long rant, but it's
it's a good.
both distinct from and including.
Yeah, and you never know who you have at the back of the bus hiding under a seat.
Yeah, you make these secret deals, you know, and you really want to renounce them. Tell you what, I'll go where you say as long as you don't show your face. You know, fear might say, don't go there. Don't aspire for that. Don't reach out. Don't have that. Don't be so bold. I mean, maybe that next project is beyond you, or you're going to do horribly if you, et cetera, et cetera. And you may make a little deal of, okay, fear, as long as you stay down, I'll turn the bus in the direction you say. Yeah, but now your life is being limited in a way that doesn't allow you to be whole and free. I mean, what if, you know, you had an album to do that required reaching out to somebody who was really famous, and you know that it would work if you could get it together. You know that would be really scary to make that call, and probably you'll be brushed off because they won't want to listen to you. Why would they blah, 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 blah? Well, then your trajectory is being driven by the passengers, not by you. You do want to listen to their voices. I mean, if they say, hey, you haven't done your taxes and you're going to get a fine, you're in Italy. There's a cultural tradition of not paying your taxes.
That's a bad example, yeah.
They're brilliant at it. My Italian colleagues. But yeah, you want to have the voice available to you. It's just, it's not their bus.
Yeah, that's very empowering, you know, because we all want what's on the top of the bus, what's the destination. We want to predetermine where we're going, because we're all going to drive the bus to a beautiful location and, you know, in the mountains or somewhere special, and we're going to have a wonderful trip, but we're all just driving through the suburbs, dropping off everyone.
Well, turns out what's on the front, it may have a destination, but if you get there, it would have another destination. So the safest way to think about it is a direction. Like, what if you could put on your bus something like west, east, south, or north? You don't know how you're going to get there yet, and you don't know what trajectory you'll be on yet. And when you head in that direction, even if you arrive at a destination, there's more of that direction to go. If you pick east or west, it fits as a good metaphor. No matter how far west you go, there's more west to go, right? So if I go west from where I am right now, in a few hours, I'll be in San Francisco. Yeah, but if I head on the bus, I just want to be in San Francisco. What do I do once I'm in San Francisco? What, am I just going to sit there like a lump? That's no fun. I mean, the game that we play in life is one where we're not yet where we're headed. At the point at which that's no longer true, you're done. So we play these games, and it's lovely. I mean, games are about the most fun things humans know how to do. Even 3-year-olds know how to do it. I'll get to that tree before you touch me. Why? It's just fun because you create a context where something hasn't happened yet that by pretense is of importance. In the end, when you touch the tree or so forth, the game's over. So better to have games that have a long trajectory, like heading west, being loving, being creative, bringing beauty into the world. When does that end? You sort of say, okay, done enough of that. Time to hurt people. I don't think so. But if you treat it as a destination, like, hey, I want to get married, or hey, I want to have kids, that's much more dangerous. But so it isn't necessarily going to be beautiful because you don't know the route. And if you pick any destination that's of importance, any of them, it turns out it's going to be sweet and sad. It's going to be sweet and sour. It's going to have lots of things. And if you put being loving on the front of your bus, you're going to feel vulnerable as hell, and you're going to be hurt. I guarantee you're going to be hurt.
Okay.
It'll just hurt even more if that's what's there in your heart to do and you don't do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Gosh, so, I think we need to speak every week now. I think because I get the feeling you're 10 steps ahead of me, because you've been thinking, it's been your job full time for years, thinking about the mind and talking to your students and so anything I can say, you've already been down this road. So
yeah, shrinks. You don't want to talk to shrinks. They're blah 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 blah. Yeah.
No, it's fascinating.
Well, the mind is fascinating, and it's kind of cool. If I could tell the story, this seems relevant. When I first knew I wanted to be a psychologist was in high school, and I was. I'd later become editor of the literary magazine in college. I was interested in art and literature and all that, but I was interested in science. I was like, what field could you do both, And my hero, my initial psychology hero, was a guy named Abraham Maslow, who was all about peak experiences and, how to live a rich life and so forth. And I thought psychology might do it. It turned out to be really right on. Because, human behavior and human mentality is about everything. It's about what you do. That's behavior too. It's about what is going on right now in the COVID crisis. It's about what's going on with racism. It's about how do we step up to global warming. It's about, and I get that physical technology and all that is important. I'm glad there's physicists and so forth doing their inventions and all that. You and I get to talk across thousands of miles because of it in real time. How crazy is that? And it also means everybody around the world can see suffering in real time. Everyone around the world can compare themselves to others. You want to see gold-plated doorknobs and gold toilet seats in the billionaires' bathrooms? You can do that. And you can, there's a constant flow of judgment and comparison. And you got that toxic triad of pain, judgment, and comparison. And that you are, even in animal models, to the degree you can do it, headed towards a train wreck. You're headed towards a lot of suffering. So, psychology and behavior applies to everything that we do.
Good time to be a psychologist.
been trying to be a psychologist, although I look at it and I really wince because, I mean, for example, here in the US, we got this big COVID crisis. I look at the big press conferences, blah, 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 and the epidemiologists or the virologists are saying, don't touch your face. That's behavior, dude. How are you going to make that happen? Nothing. Just don't do it. Did anybody ever have kids? I mean, what happens when you tell a kid, don't do it? They do it. That's what happens. Don't put beans in yours. Don't say that to your kids. They're going to try it. It's so, the behavioral scientists, have been pushed off into the little corner of, oh, you deal with mental illness.
Yeah.
And otherwise, it's just, they're silent. And I hope we get beyond that because behavioral scientists are partly responsible for it. We've talked geek and we've sometimes talked things that are not really useful. But there's a lot of things we have to say that are useful. Maybe even how to stop touching your face or wear a mask. It's funny, stop touching your face. It turned out I did research on it 40 years ago accidentally. Wow. And I developed a method that will keep you from touching your face.
Well, now's the time to republish.
Well, it's really, really easy. It's the world's simplest thing to do. I was doing it for another reason, but I tested it in several experiments, and it lasts up to 9 months as long as you keep doing it. Get a little sheet or a recording device. You can use your iPhone or whatever, or a golf counter or something, and count every time you touch your face.
Okay.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it. It'll reduce it by 95% in about 5 or 10 minutes, and it'll stay as long as you keep doing it. And if you actually have a device that's pretty visible and reminds you to be checking in and looking, that alone will have about 80% of the effect, even if you don't record it. Turns out you don't have to record it all that accurately. You just have to try. That's it. I did a blog about it early on in the COVID thing because it's the only evidence-based method other than wearing a dog collar, those things that you put on your dogs, those cones to keep them from biting on their paw if you have to replace, have your vet do something with your pet.
I think Fauci's got them lined up. He wants those next.
Yeah, that's why you wear those big cones.
Yeah.
I would be more happy with that. At least you'd say, don't use your face, and here's a freaking transparent cone to wear. We'll just be cone heads. But don't just get up there, dude, and say that without it ever occurring to you. You're asking people to do behavior. That's not your field. And we know people won't do what you say. That's not your job, is to get people to not do it. Your job isn't just to tell them. But physical scientists, they haven't thought about it. And now in the US, we got people who deliberately don't wear masks.
Right.
They're proud of it. It's woo, I'm not wearing a mask. Of course, we got an idiot encouraging people to do it who happens to lead the country. But that was so predictable. Anyway, I'm on a rant, but the rant is just... Yeah, I wish what you said is true, that, we've thought about it so much. So, we've thought about it, but we're somehow not even in the conversation when we're needed.
Do you think that as you get the leaders you deserve, you get the food system that you deserve as a collective consciousness, as a culture, you get the medical system, the medicine that you deserve, because that fits in with the way you think and your vibration?
Well, actions have consequences. I'm a behaviorist, and that's the core of behavioral thinking is you do what you do and you get what you get, and your job is to open up to that. And if you don't like the consequences, change what you do. And that is at all levels, from you as an individual to you as in your relationship with your people that you love, to family, to neighborhood, to community, to nation, to world. But I wouldn't say deserve quite in the way of sort of being judgmental, like, you deserve that, in the sense that, we get what we do and we need to step up to that and take responsibility for it in the original way that word was written, which is ability to respond. Take responsibility for it. And look at. If we don't like the results, we're going to have to change what we do. And that includes how we talk to each other and how we language about it, how we even think about these problems, how we organize things. You know, part of what's happened, I think, in terms of leadership and economies and all of that is that this will take us a little bit off, but not too much if it's linked to some actual empirical work that I'm doing, is that we've organized our world socially around concepts as we've gone from the tribal primates, where we did it by trial and error, and we had cultural evolution driving just what works for these indigenous peoples, often in a mystical or religious vein or something. You know, it's not by accident when you're in parts of the world where, for example, pigs, which are lovely to eat, they taste great, but they destroy vegetation very easily. And if you don't have a lot of water, you don't want to be able to have pigs. And suddenly in the Middle East, let's say all the religions say you can't eat pigs. Why? Well, because they freaking destroy the ecology of that area if you ever did do it. So good thing God gave you some direction there. Don't eat the pigs. Whereas in other parts of the world where it's quite friendly, somehow God doesn't whisper that advice. God says other things, you know, like make sure you cook it before you eat it, or, you know, so things evolve that help us. But we've got in our culture these ideas of who human beings are, which are so horribly wrong. And the two big ones are, in order to get people to do what they yearn for and aspire to, you have to tell them what to do, command and control. Or people are basically selfish. They're basically greedy. Greed is good because if you feed it right, it's the invisible hand will produce prosperity. They're both lies. They're not how humans are organized at all. We don't like being told what to do, and we're not inherently greedy. But we've got our entire world's economy organized in either one of these two models, both of which are an absolute failure in terms of being able to bring resources, not an absolute failure, but relative failure. And so I think we're trying to find a way of how to be together that will allow us to cooperate and in community step up to the challenges. Mm-hmm. And it turns out there's some ways to do that. So I'm part of kind of an evolutionary economic wing. Okay. They're linking what you do is what you get to what Elinor Ostrom won a Nobel Prize for in economics, because the economists saw this train wreck between the two wings of the left and the right and wanted a middle path. And Lynn Ostrom won the Nobel in economics. She was a political scientist for showing that indigenous peoples have been protecting their forests, their lakes, their rivers, their fisheries, their streams for thousands of years without command and control, top-down government control, and without private ownership. And the way that they've done it is by cooperation that fits evolutionary principles. So we kind of get what we deserve in one sense, but I wonder if we could bring forward thinking that is evidence-based. Like, for example, let's take some Nobel Prize winning principles about how people learn to cooperate and regulate their resources. We've done that. We have if you're interested in how we've taken ACT and that and put it together, if you go to www.prosocial, all one word, prosocial.world.
Okay.
It's free. You can see what's there, and it walks out how to put that together. Whether it's you, and I've done the research on this, whether it's your band, and you have to figure out how we're going to decide what music to play or something, if it's a radio station or if it's a charity raising money for people in Africa, or whether it's a group of farmers trying to grow organic vegetables or whatever it is, you can bring these principles of psychological flexibility and of Lynn Ostrom's core design principles, and in community do a much better job of working together to solve common problems. Much better. And it's not that hard. And when you see it, you go like, duh. But if you actually look at your groups you're in, the groups that are not working well are not doing the duh. So science helps us. It helps orient us towards ways forward that allow us to see what's useful and to leave the rest.
So would you say you've been focused on the individual in your career, fixing the individual with the ACT program, and now you're going to the macro?
Yeah, because I'm a psychologist, and so the psychological level is the level of the whole individual organism functioning in and with the world, based interpreted in terms of your history and circumstance. But in relationships and in small groups, you're now leaving that level and you're headed up towards a sociological and anthropological level. And it requires different thinking when you do that, just in the sense that when you go down and you start thinking about, I was using that metaphor of being the mayor of a city. Well, think of your body that way. I mean, you've got so many different things going on with your underlying neurobiology and genetics and epigenetics and organ systems and brain circuits and, and those require different principles. And then if you look at those and you try to understand it, well, then what is the underlying neurochemical things? Well, but what are the underlying physical things so it's nested, science is a unified fabric that goes, from the physical world to the entire world's culture and everything that it contains. So yes, your answer is yes, I'm a psychologist, but I'm not the kind that says, oh, really, it's only individuals behaving. There's no such thing as groups. No, that's like saying, oh, no, it's not really psychology. It's all your brain. Mm-hmm, that's like saying, oh, no, it's not your brain. It's all chemicals. But it's like saying, oh, no, it's not chemicals. It's all gluons. I mean, come on. There's one world. And can we be a little more humble about our little piece, our little part of the elephant we're describing, but then look for the ways that it overlaps and connects with other levels of analysis and play nice with it. Figure out a way to pass off what you know and to take what others know when that Venn diagram overlaps. And keep our eye on this larger human endeavor to bring a scientific understanding to the one world. We've been brilliant at it. I mean, my goodness, you and I are talking because of it. Mm-hmm. But the one place we've been horrible at it is in behavior. Yeah. So time's out.
Quite fundamental, yeah. That's incredible because, I mean, are you 71 now? Is that right?
I'm about to turn 72 in a month.
Oh, okay. And you're still going. You're still formulating and expanding your reach. And yeah.
Oh, God. I kind of pray to the deities that give me another 10, maybe even another 20, would you? Because I feel like there's some really important things that are just over the horizon. And so I'm most excited about not what's behind me, but what's ahead. And yeah, the stuff that we've done is useful, like these principles of psychological flexibility. It's a hack of the mind in a way. It isn't everything to know, but it's the 20% that does the 80%. And that's not just a prideful thing. I mean, some of that is actually based on data. I've looked at how many of the processes of change really work when you intervene on things in the entire world's literature. And the stuff that we've been talking about here and the stuff that's in this work can account for about half of what we know. And if you get a little more flexible, for at least 80% of what we know. So, and some of those studies are about to come out. So this kind of bottom-up, process-focused, try to figure out what the principles are, get less interested about brand name and who the heroes are, what's a tradition or trademark, and focus on the processes. That allows psychology to really play fully and yet not be arrogant and say, oh, no, it's all psychology. So, yeah. That's what's I see ahead of me, is how the things that we've done have set us up to play nice with others who really want to think that way. The folks I'm playing with most are the evolutionists, because they think that way. They haven't gotten used to thinking about how to evolve a society and so forth, other than a few people like my close colleague, David Sloan Wilson. Brilliant. And if you want to talk to somebody who's worth talking to, talk to David Sloan Wilson and check out a few of his books.
Wow, okay.
Because the evolutionists got pushed in a box after World War II, and evolving on purpose meant people died because eugenics was right over the hill, which turns out was bullshit. You know, Hitler was not a Darwinian. He was just a racist. I mean, they didn't need Darwin to do what he did. So we need to wash the evolutionists clean from that unfair spattering that got onto them from the Second World War, and learn how to use the queen of all the life sciences, the one theory without which life sciences make no sense, which is Darwin. How to use that to do, to evolve your life, or to evolve your culture, or your band, or your community, or whatever.
Gosh, that's fascinating. So that'll be that's your next phase.
That's my next step, is to try to take ACT and really fully nest it inside evolutionary science, and then take all of that and try to move behavioral science into the visibility of the culture, so that we get to do something with things like, police brutality, or COVID, or immigration, or racism, or things where, yes, we need psychologists, but not just people to sort of say, oh, it's this or that, but in the sense of some sort of abstract theory, but what are the concrete things we can do?
That's a fascinating job you have. I mean, you have the freedom to talk to all these people and formulate these, unify your ideas. It's you're a lucky man.
We're back to the earlier part of the conversation. They call psychology the queen of the sciences. A lot of scientists don't even think of it as a science, but it's called the queen of the sciences just in this way, that every scientist is a behaving person.
Yeah, has a brain.
So when they're doing science, they're doing the psychology of science. What else could that be?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, so I have to write a song about your work. I don't think I should do the next one. I'll wait till the book comes out. But so I've got enough songs about my crazy mind and watching myself. So
Yeah, I listened to some of your music. I enjoyed it very much. And what a crazy idea, my friend, to say. It isn't why I said yes to it, but I'm very interested to see what you end up doing with that work.
Well, you already had a song in Learn in One, Derive in Two, Put in Networks that change what you do.
That ditty.
Yeah.
That's the relational frame theory ditty. The human mind in 4 silly lines.
That's your whole career summed up, you said.
That basic science career, yeah. The applied extension of that is more complex, but.
So what would you...
actually, what I think when I hear beautiful songs, almost always, if they land with wisdom, you know what I mean? If they and how could you tell that? Well, a lot of the ones that are popular, actually, it's not that we're chasing after popularity, but if you look at classics, ones that land and stick, even in the lyrics and stuff, like, hackneyed phrases like love makes the world go round.
Yeah.
That's right on.
Yeah.
Of course. But
I can't use that one.
You can't use that one. You can't use it. But isn't it, see what I'm saying is that, well, here's what I think, is that when I look at songs that really touch and are uplifted and that resonate and so forth, if you were just say, quick, which ACT process is that, or how does that fit? Of course it fits. Of course it fits. Because people are people, and do I have time for a little rant on this?
Go ahead. There's no time limit on this.
Oh, okay. Well, like if you it's actually in a liberated mind. If you take something like this, the arc of a story that really resonates to people, very often there's some sort of hero's journey in there. Mm-hmm. And what is that going to entail? It always entails a normal person suddenly is met with an extraordinary challenge. And initially they're going like, why me? No, you know, it's like Frodo, you know, like, I don't know, not me. Right?
Yeah.
And then you, you know, begin to orient towards the challenge, but it's scary and there's all kinds of emotions that are, or self-aggrandizing, prideful things, or, and all kinds of thoughts are crowding in that restrict you. But then, and there's like that dark night of the soul of who am I even, and and either by some sort of transformation of how you think about yourself, or often through your mates, your friends coming in, or sometimes through magic or wizardry or something happens where you find a strength or a resource. You find a way of being and a deeper sense of purpose and of an empowering sense of resources that might allow you to do this. And you accept the challenge and you say, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And you go through these series of steps and you constantly slip, but you come back, and you slip and you come back. And it looks like it'll never work, but you come back, you hang on, you know, you know, the direction, the thing on the bus matters, you know, the passengers are shrieking, to mix those metaphors. And through your one step at a time persistence, you find the golden fleece. You throw the ring into the fire. You know, you make it happen with these newfound resources, and often with your friends in community. Yeah. And then it assumes normality again. And you're on the train station, you know, and Harry Potter's putting his son on the Hogwarts Express for the next round, the next adventure, the next generation to face their journey. Well, you know, why does that resonate so much? Why are we moved to tears by songs that are about love and loss? And why? Well, because these are our human journey, and the psychological flexibility processes. I don't know if you noticed it, but I just walked through all 6 of them, of this kind of conceptualized self that doesn't include a hero's journey, that's faced by difficult emotions and difficult thoughts, but learns to find a place where the deeper sense of self and also connection with others that brings you into that challenge, where the values you have matters, where you can organize your behavior in community with others around it, and you walk through that challenge and you find a way forward. That's spinning around the 6 psychological flexibility processes.
In the book. Okay.
Yeah. You just spin right through these processes of the negative ones, of being entangled with the vision of yourself, and entangled, you know, avoidant of emotions, entangled with thoughts, you know, not able to attend properly to what's going on in your world, and disconnected from your values and behaving impulsively or procrastinating. And when you flip it, you find this more spiritual sense of self that's bigger and broader, from which you can think and feel more flexibly, come into the present moment, see what's at stake, embrace those values, and organize your behavior around it. You know, it's in all Beowulf, it's in all the great stories, and I think it's in the great songs too. It's just there.
God, you're asking a lot, though, Stephen. I mean, you're asking for a Greek tragedy, megalithic pop hit, the greatest song of all time. I think can you bring the bar down a little bit?
Well, you know, but where that journey starts is in this sense of self, this sense of self that is not pointed towards and characterized, but is the place from which. And it starts with this more spiritual sense of self that you already are singing about. And yeah, I'm not giving you a challenge so much as saying, you know, what art and literature and dance and music has been doing from the beginning is touching the human heart in terms of what are the processes that enchain us or liberate us. And I'm on a journey as a Western geeky science type. It's the same journey,
right?
You know, and so I think anything you do, if it resonates deeply with your heart and aspirations, will resonate with our conversation in some way.
Okay. All right. Well, it's very general, but is there something more specific you can narrow it down a little?
Well,
Because
I gave you quite a good challenge. You had to
all
write
right, all right.
the
I just feel like I'm one of your students here, and
Beowulf in or Harry Potter in 1 minute.
I just feel like one of your students who has to write their thesis on, and you've given them. You say it can be about anything, and I mean, gosh.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think what is the immediate journey that people who are listening have?
Right.
Almost always the immediate journey begins with a sense that there's more to me than just this voice within or the problems that I have or whatever. You catch that there's a whole human being who maybe you don't even believe it. Maybe you didn't say those words, maybe too scary, but that awareness resides and you can. I mean, even at the moment that you're at all interested in change, transformation, progress, or anything, there's a part of you that you may not even say out loud for fear it would, you'd have to knock on wood and it would jinx it, but that says you can, that there's possibility here.
Okay.
But then the first thing they're going to hit is it's scary, and there's a voice that says you can't, and wants you to live your life inside a little box, inside a cage that's made out of rice paper with bars printed on it, and little signs that says you can never open this door, and this cage will never be broken out of. Yeah. And I think a lot of folks live their lives inside these little rice paper cages, trying to be okay and waiting for it to end. And maybe if I smoke enough weed or drink another 6-pack, it'll all be something I can survive.
Okay. So don't be not limited.
Yeah. In your pain, you find your values, in your values, you find your pain. That your guide to being able to move forward is right there, even inside that entanglement, inside that suffering. It's not your enemy. It's actually pointing. It's like a flashlight pointing into the darkness if you know how to look.
Okay.
Flip your pain over and you'll find the things that you aspire to. And if you could take that you can part and notice the voice, what if you move towards what is on the other side of that pain?
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Like if you're betrayed in love, why did it hurt so much? Because love matters.
Yeah.
Maybe you would prefer that it didn't, because you're going to suffer. If you care, you're going to suffer. And yet you suffer even more if you try to pretend you don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's a lot of space to play in, but
Yeah.
I'm not giving
You hurt
you
where you care. Yeah. I like that. You hurt where you care. You said that in the book. Yeah. Oh, well, that's wonderful. I mean,
people are used to using their sweet thoughts as a guide and hoping, and then they turn it into sugar soup. They're not used to using their pain as a guide. And that TED talk that you saw, my night on the carpet. I mean, thank God for panic disorder. Without it, I'd probably still just be trying to make my Vita bigger.
Okay.
I've got plenty big enough Vita. That's not the point. My point is, I was more interested in cranking it out, and I can have compassion for it, but part of me said no. Said, you're just not going to do that. I'm not going to let you. You're not even going to be able to teach a class. How about that? Smart aleck. Thank God for that. So there's wisdom even inside our pain if we're willing to open up to it.
Yeah, it reminded me of like Eckhart Tolle or even the Buddha, or even all the great enlightenment.
Another example of a hero story, and it'll fit that same arc. If you write out Tully's
I'm ready.
You write out Siddhartha, it fits that same arc. But do you know that something like 95% of the human community say that they've had spiritual experiences and that they're important? The other 5% are lying. It's in us. So maybe, that doesn't mean we're the Buddha or whatever. I mean, we do have heroes who have been especially good. But in small ways, we're doing this all the time, of catching in awareness and finding, of opening a door. And so, I agree. It's the Tolle story. It's the Buddha story. But I think it's also the human story, which is why people can watch those movies, listen to those songs, and say yes, because it resonates with them. They know something about this. It's just their mind doesn't.
Don't you think we're spiritual beings having physical experiences?
Yeah, almost like that. Yeah, you could talk. I mean, I avoid the ontology of it because I don't want to say is about anything. I want me to say this is a cup, even though I'm drinking from it. But yeah, absolutely. I'd say in some deep sense of the term, we're spiritual beings. And that's the human story of how to show up to the finite world, where you're born, you live and die, where everything you look at, will end. On the one hand. And on the other, that we have the courage to love and to care, to value, to pursue. Pretty amazing, improbable combination.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really feel we went much further than I hoped we would, and we didn't even go much into your work. I advise everyone to buy the book, watch the TED Talks. Just you have so much of your 40 books.
If they want to be in a conversation with me, if they go to stephenchayes.com and say yes, please send it to me. I'll send them a little mini course on ACT, and then I'll send them newsletters. I don't spam people, and there's a one-click opt-out. But occasionally things happen. I have an audio book coming out from an outfit called Sounds True in about a week. I've done a lot for therapists. I haven't done that much other than A Liberated Mind and Get Out of Your Mind into Your Life for normal folks. Because
you're behind the scenes, yeah.
Yeah, I like leading from behind, and I'm trying to get a much larger community. I'm stepping forward now because I'm old, and I figure time's up. That's why I wrote A Liberated Mind, is that I don't want to lead the parade, because I want the best minds to decide where it should go. And I'm not the best mind. I just started it. So I'm trying to step forward now also with some things that are directly to lay folks. This audio course I think is pretty good. It has a lot of exercises and things that will play out and answer practical questions. But yeah,
that'll be available on your website.
Yeah, Amazon and the rest will do it as of July 15th. So it's only 6 days away. It gets released.
Oh, okay.
I think it's called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, and it has my name, and it's an Audible book. Or if you still use CDs, which nobody does, they'll send you physical CDs.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you again for taking the time to speak to me. It's a wonderful experience to read your book and then halfway through speak to you, the actual author. It's a very touching experience.
Well, I had a blast, and
no, wonderful. I'll send you the song as soon as it's ready. And
awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you very much, Stephen.
Peace, love, and life.
Most of us live in a state of constant confusion, as automatic thoughts cause circuitous delusions. We don't want these feelings, so choose distractions. With simple exercises, your mind can be taught to watch the act of thinking without entangling every memory, every faction, override rigid reactions. There's more than one voice. An argument begins whenever you're faced with a choice. Does this to and fro feel familiar? Write down what the voices are repeating at you. Don't think which are appropriate or even true. See them as quarreling children, watching amusement. Your mind's a bus, thoughts are passengers, but they're distracting and driving and they're causing a fuss. Keep your destination sight always in mind. Use your thoughts, choose how to react. Use your thoughts, choose how to react. Use your thoughts, how to react.
Thank you to Maurizio Sarnicola and Massimino Vozza for working with me on the music, and Dori Verbo, my researcher. And thank you to you for listening. Please rate and review the podcast if you enjoyed it. If you like the song and want to support us, then you can download it for $1 on our website at podsongs.com. It's also available on all the major music streaming services. Thanks again.